Hey everyone, I'm Harrison Fiscus, a second year student at the University of California, Berkeley, currently interning in London this summer. And in answering the question, how has globalization affected my own identity, I think it's probably best to start with kind of my family's immigration story or how we got to where we are now here in America. Um, my family, or my mom's side of the family, hails from Bulgaria. They came to the United States in around 1900 through Ellis Island. But interestingly enough, when my great grandmother and my great grandfather came over, they came with the last name Dimitrov, and at immigration, immigration officers had them switch their name to Davis because Dimitrov was, I guess, too difficult to pronounce, too difficult to write, or something of that sort. But I think that this is very interesting and ties in well to Mohsen Al-Attar's natural law theory video, kind of reflecting John Stuart Mill, or violating actually John Stuart Mill's notion of a law, in that John Stuart Mill said that a law should only prevent something that's harmful to others. But although changing someone's name probably wasn't a law, it's not written anywhere, but it's clearly been documented to have been done. Uh, Someone's last name isn't harmful of really anyone else. So I think this kind of violates John Stuart Mill's notion of a law. I think for the most part, my globalized experience, or my identity that has been shaped by globalization, has been largely affected by the internet, specifically social media. I can count numerous times where I've been on Twitter when some worldly event has happened, and I'll know before my parents, because really their outlet of finding this global news is the news channels themselves, and they'll watch those usually in the morning and the evening. But I'm always on my phone for the most part, getting updates, Twitter updates, Instagram updates. So if any big news does hit, I can find it on there. And then there are also commentary shows, YouTube videos that really comment on the world's politics, issues, and stuff like that. And I think that's how I really gained my kind of the knowledge that I do have of this global world. In considering some dangers and opportunities of globalization, I think one great opportunity you have is just the exposure to diversity. And in doing so, the same reason you encourage diversity in a workplace, by kind of having this global environment where many different people are coming together to either intermingle or talk about different ideas, you get exactly that. You get different ideas shared at this global table, and then we can approach problems differently. And then, as alluded to in Ruthla Ferla's ethnically ambiguous New York Times article, which I thought was fascinating because that was written almost 15 years ago, and it's still relevant today with like people like all the controversy about the latest uh, princess Meghan Markle, who's definitely ethnically ambiguous, and all the controversy that raised, especially with the royal crown. But I think that article really references kind of how the growth that these multiracial people have kind of seen, and the inclusion of them and the promotion of them, and it's something that really hasn't been seen in history. And I think that's an aspect of or that's come from a globalized world, which is really cool to see. However, on the other hand, there are some, I think, dangers, or maybe not dangers, but cautions in a global world, especially when you try to regulate that. If we go back to the natural law theory video, let's discuss how um, in an ever globalizing world, it becomes more and more difficult to apply laws to certain areas, because if people of different races, religions, ideas are coming together, chances are they're not all going to share the same ideas, and it'll be tough to kind of put a guiding principle on all of them, especially if some conflict. And especially as this grows larger and larger, we're going to have a more and more difficult time kind of regulating globalization. And that's not to say that we can't regulate it or we shouldn't regulate it at all, because then things can also become dangerous that way. But we should just be careful and kind of tread lightly to ensure that we don't offend. And finally, in addressing the question, like, how will my current experience here in London or Europe affect my global identity, I can definitely say I felt like Gregor Samsa's character a lot from Franz Kafka's Metamorphosis, especially traveling these past 2 weekends, going to France and Italy, where I don't speak the language, and trying to order food or deal with any of the locals. I felt, I would say, I guess, a bit insecure in trying to work out what it is I wanted. I felt like people were looking at me strange, even if I wasn't communicating. Just I guess the way I walked or the way I dressed, something gave away that I was not normal there. And I did feel a bit uncomfortable, and it challenged me to kind of put myself in their perspective and what they saw in me, and how could I be respectful of their community. Um, and then also, additionally, in what I've experienced thus far and what I hope to kind of continue to grow, I mentioned earlier that I think a lot of my global identity is based on the internet and social media. But now, in talking with people here in England, um, I've noticed that that view is a little bit biased, or at least politically. For example, I've been talking with people here about Brexit, specifically coworkers, and where I got a lot of my knowledge of the events from left leaning late night talk show comedians, probably is the most reliable. And talking with the genuine people here, my understanding of Brexit is a lot different, and I think it's important to acknowledge that social media can be a great tool, and I think I've learned a lot from it. But I need to be careful in making sure that I approach all kind of global problems, global crises from all angles possible.